Next time you step onto an escalator, look down at your feet. Right beside the moving steps, along the edges, you'll notice something strange. A long strip of black bristles, like a giant brush running along both sides. Most people never question it. Some people think it's there to clean the escalator. Others assume it's just a random design detail. But here's the strange part. That brush isn't for cleaning. In fact, it's there for a much more important reason. One that has saved people from serious injuries. Because escalators have a hidden danger most riders never notice. A danger that appears exactly where your shoes, clothes, and shoelaces come closest to the machine. And surprisingly, the brush itself doesn't actually stop the danger. Instead, it does something far more clever. It tricks your brain into staying safe. So today, we're uncovering the hidden logic behind a small feature millions of people touch every day, but almost nobody understands. Why do escalators have brushes? Those brushes have an official name. They're called escalator skirt deflectors. And they exist because of a tiny gap most people never notice. Between the moving step and the side panel of an escalator, there's a narrow space called the skirt panel gap. It's only a few millimeters wide. But that tiny gap can be surprisingly dangerous. Shoelaces, clothing, bags, and even soft rubber shoes can get pulled into it. And because escalators move continuously, anything trapped there can get dragged downward. This kind of accident is known as a skirt entrapment incident. Before safety improvements were introduced, these incidents happen more often than you might expect, especially with children, long clothing, soft footwear, loose shoelaces, so engineers needed a solution. But instead of making escalators completely gap-free, which is mechanically impossible, they invented a small, simple feature that dramatically reduced the risk: the escalator brush. Escalators have been around for more than a century. The first working versions appeared in the late 1800s, but they became widely popular in the early 20th century. Department stores quickly adopted them. Why? Because escalators solved a major problem. They moved customers effortlessly between floors. Stores discovered something fascinating. People who used escalators were far more likely to visit multiple levels, which meant more browsing and more shopping. Soon escalators spread everywhere: shopping malls, subway stations, airports, office buildings. But as escalators became more common, so did safety incidents. One of the most frequent problems involved the edges of the steps. Escalator steps are designed to move in a continuous loop. To do that, they must slide extremely close to the side panels. But they can never touch those panels. If they did, friction would destroy the machine. So engineers leave a small gap. And that gap created a surprising danger. Shoes, especially rubber ones, could rub against the side panel. The friction would slowly pull them inward. Once caught, the moving steps could drag the object deeper into the mechanism. These accidents were rare, but serious enough that safety engineers began looking for ways to reduce them. The solution they eventually designed was unexpectedly simple. The real danger zone on an escalator isn't the moving steps. It's the side walls. If you watch carefully while riding one, you'll notice something interesting. The steps don't just move upward. They also slide slightly sideways as they travel. This sideways motion happens because of how the internal wheels follow the escalator's tracks. As the steps shift slightly, they come extremely close to the side panels. And if something presses against that panel, the movement can create a dragging force. Rubber shoes are especially vulnerable. The soft material can grip the metal surface. Over time, that grip pulls the shoe toward the gap. Children are particularly at risk. Why? Because kids often stand with their feet right against the sides. Sometimes they even sit on the steps or play near the edges. Loose clothing can also get caught. Long coats, scarves, and shoelaces have all been involved in escalator accidents. Engineers needed something that would keep riders away from the sides. But warning signs alone weren't enough. People simply ignored them. So designers turned to an unusual trick. Instead of forcing people to behave safely, they decided to nudge them into it. This is where the brush comes in. At first glance, it looks like a cleaning tool, but it's actually a behavior control device. When your shoe touches the brush, something interesting happens. The bristles create a strange tickling sensation. It feels slightly uncomfortable. Instinctively, most people react the same way. They move their foot away. That tiny reaction is exactly what engineers wanted, because by stepping away from the brush, you also step away from the dangerous gap. In other words, the brush doesn't block the danger. It simply reminds you to stay away from it. This is known as a passive safety design. Instead of forcing a rule, the design gently guides behavior. Airplane tray tables, seatbelt alarms, the textured bumps on sidewalk crossings. All of these work the same way. They don't physically stop you from doing something risky. They just make the safe behavior feel more natural. And in the case of escalators, the brush works surprisingly well. Many studies found that skirt deflectors significantly reduce the number of accidents, all thanks to a strip of bristles most people barely notice. The escalator brush is a perfect example of something called behavioral design. It uses human psychology instead of force. Think about how people behave in public spaces. Most people don't constantly read warning signs. They rely on automatic reactions. If something feels uncomfortable, they instinctively move away. Designers call this a tactile cue. Your brain processes touch signals faster than written instructions. So when the brush touches your shoe, your brain immediately says, "Move." No thinking required. This makes the brush incredibly effective. Even children who can't read warning signs still respond to it. In fact, this type of design appears in many places. Road rumble strips that vibrate your car when you drift lanes, raised pavement dots guiding visually impaired pedestrians, door handles shaped to indicate push or pull. These features quietly guide behavior without requiring conscious effort. And escalator brushes follow the same philosophy. They transform a complex safety warning into a simple physical sensation, a tiny design choice that subtly protects millions of riders every day. Today's escalators are far safer than early versions. Engineers have added multiple safety systems. Many modern escalators include anti-slip step grooves, bright yellow step edges, emergency stop buttons, skirt panel coatings that reduce friction. Some even use special low-friction materials along the sides. These coatings prevent shoes from gripping the panel. But even with all these upgrades, the brush remains. Why? Because it's simple. It requires no electricity, no sensors, no maintenance beyond occasional replacement. And most importantly, it works. Across the world, millions of escalators still include skirt deflectors. Not because they're high-tech, but because they're a brilliantly simple solution. Sometimes the smartest engineering isn't about complexity. It's about understanding human behavior. The next time you step onto an escalator, look down. Right beside your shoes, those quiet little bristles are waiting. They're not cleaning anything. They're doing something far more interesting. They're guiding your behavior, a tiny design trick that nudges millions of people towards safer habits without them even realizing it. No alarms, no flashing warnings, just a gentle brush against your shoe. It's a reminder that great design often hides in the smallest details. And once you start noticing these details, you begin to see the world differently, because everyday objects are full of hidden logic. And sometimes, the smallest feature on a machine is the one that protects you the most. So the next time you ride an escalator, you'll know exactly why that brush is there.